Hello there. Welcome to MYBcast, a podcast and video series devoted to exploring alternatives for self-care through somatic touch therapies of all sorts. We are fascinated with the mind-body connection, and so are the people we talk with. Today, we're continuing our series, Portraits of the Pioneers. Portraits offers an in-depth look at those who have been actively involved in the exploration, development, and practice of somatic touch therapies since their early inception. I'm Anna Marie Bowers, and I'm joined today with my co-host, Richard Mack. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. So nice to be here.
We are excited to welcome our first guest for today, Linda Garofallou. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, yes, you did, Anna Marie. It's. I feel very honored. I've been watching the whole podcast series. It's such an important body of work you're collecting that just, it doesn't exist in writing I mean, those real experiences, personal experiences of how people have come to do the work they do is a treasure that you're now archiving. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. And why don't we just start by turning that around and asking you the same question? How did you get into all of this work with somatics? What was going on with you and your life?
It was one of those things where you make a plan and you set an intention, and then that opens the door for life to come swooping in to open other doors you would have never thought to go down. So the work I'm doing, which I feel so blessed to do, I could have never made up in my mind. There's no way I could have put the pieces together that they would fall into place in the way they have. And I've just been blessed. I've been blessed with a series of mentors that have really been fundamental and provided the ground under which I stand, truly, from which each one opens another door and another door. And it just has continued for now. What have I been doing body work for almost 40 years, and specifically with children and families for a little over 25.
You're currently working primarily with autism and early childhood mental health. Am I correct? Or
I am. I originally started, I had a holistic natural skincare bodywork center in New York City for many years where I worked with adults. And as I transitioned, I became so interested. I knew something was happening under my hands. I was trained by a wonderful woman in Germany, but a very holistic view. It was based on anthroposophical medicine and that fourfold being of man. And so it was this very holistic look at the body and health. And it was all based upon creating health and well-being through a body treatment that she taught that incorporated reflexology, lymphatic drainage, colored light therapy, aromatherapy. It was a whole series of therapeutic disciplines that she wove into this beautiful 2-hour treatment. So I had done that for years, but really understood that what was happening through touch was a communication and a relationship that was established. And there was this bi-directional conversation that went on through touch. And I knew I could feel and sense what was happening in the bodies, in the minds, in the whole kind of countenance of that person. I became fascinated to understand what that was. So I segued out of that and went back to school to get my master's degree in human physiology to understand, try to make those connections. And my mentor always spoke about one of the most important things the skin did was transform light, was helping to digest light. I was fascinated by that. And so I started kind of looking through that. And that's where I thought I was going. I thought I was going into research. I really wanted to do that piece of research. After my master's, I started a PhD program. to do that piece of research. That's when other doors opened. As I was doing that, those studies, I decided to go back and do some volunteer work I'd been wanting to do for years, and that was to work with, at the time, the AIDS babies. And that's what took me to Children's Hospital at Newark Beth Israel, which is this wonderful inner city hospital. Newark is kind of the crossroads in the US of all of this wonderful variety and group of people coming from all over the world. So it really opened so many possibilities. And I just went to do volunteer work holding the AIDS babies. It just so happened that those babies were in the same nursery as the drug exposed babies. So I was working with both the AIDS babies and the babies that were born addicted to drugs. And at that time, this was in the early 2000s. And at that time, if a baby was born addicted to drugs, the first thing they did was separate it from its mother. We now know from neuroscience, it is if at any point a mother is primed to make those changes, everything in her neurobiology is opening her to the possibility of change and growth and attachment to her child. And I watched that being separated. And I was just working with the babies. And at first I thought, oh, I need to go learn something about babies. At that time, right when I started my volunteer work, the child life specialist, the head of the child life department, and the head of the OT department, pediatric OT, had just brought in infant massage to work with the babies. And I said, I've been doing body work for 20 years. If you teach me how to do this with babies, that's what I'll do as my volunteer work. I took over that program. Both of them got pregnant and left, and I ended up taking over the grant program. And from that little room of giving infant massage to the drug-exposed babies and the HIV babies, it spread throughout the hospital. If I had gone to the hospital and said, I have a program for infant massage where we'll take it into every department in the children's hospital, it would have never happened. But what happened is one by one, the doctors and nurses would come in as I had the babies on the floor doing that gas colic constipation relief routine. And they go, oh my gosh, can you do that for our babies in the NICU and the PICU? So these were the babies that had constipation so badly from all of the drugs and the pain meds after surgery. They were so constipated. And just so happened the first time they invited me into the pediatric intensive care unit, and I did that little gas colic constipation relief routine, the baby just quieted and had a big poop. And it just grew. From the PICU, I went to the NICU. From the NICU, then I brought in the papers from Tiffany Field, who has done for the last 50 years all of the wonderful research on the beneficial aspects of touch for premature babies. And then she expanded, and she had a wonderful study where she showed the children with leukemia had not only a larger population of natural killer cells, but it was a more active population of natural killer cells and had incredible benefits for children with cancer. So we started taking it into the oncology ward. The first thing I learned was the beauty of touch. As much as I love to massage babies, was not about me giving that touch. It was about giving that skill, helping the parents to develop that skill so they could make that connection with their babies. So often parents are just the bystanders in a hospital with, mind-boggling things happening to their children. And this was a piece where they really could be empowered to be a part of the changes and the growth that they could see for their children. So that that was like a major shift. There was no going back to research for me. This was I'd found my home, and it's been a growth from there. From there, I was asked I wrote a grant to take that program because I would see how well the babies were doing in the newborn nursery. The ones that were that they were addicted to drugs, and just I learned more about self-regulation, working with those babies who are desperately dysregulated from all of the, I think first and foremost from the separation from their mothers. No one knew then how powerful that separation was. You put on top of that all the detox they're going through and the tremors of withdrawal, and they couldn't eat, they couldn't drink, they couldn't open their eyes to the fluorescent lights. I learned more about regulation than any book or any course I've ever taken through those babies. From there, I wrote a grant to teach the foster parents who gave homes to those babies as they came out of the hospital. And the really important piece was when I was invited to teach the mothers in a residential mother-baby program how to do the massage. It became part of that. It was one of the few residential drug rehab programs at the time that allowed mothers to have their babies in drug rehab. So I went once a week, and we all got down on the floor and did. And these are mothers who had their own dysregulations. And it proved to me the power of touch for both the parent and the child, and the combination of the relationship and what can happen within that has stayed with me since then, and really been the path of all the things that I do.
So two things have come up for me while you're talking. One is I really would love to know, did you get to actually, as a massage therapist, do some massage for those mothers as well? And was that life-changing for maybe the mother as well as you? And then my other question is, I was told in my infant massage training by the instructor, no woman who gets pregnant says to herself, I'm going to be the worst mother in the world. And to assume that because a mother has made bad choices will mean she can't change or become a good mother, caretaker, caregiver for this child is to make an erroneous assumption. And so I applaud the Infant Massage Association for really thinking that through and saying, no, we're teaching mothers how to work with their children. So those two things, working with the mothers with touch, how was that? What did you see? And so it kind of ties into that other part about, did they change their lives? Some.
Yeah, some distinguishable way, but it was one of the most powerful learning experiences for me. Number one, because I came very jaundiced to the program. I cringe at the thought, because the grant I wrote at the hospital talked about providing infant massage to abandoned babies, because that's what they called them at the hospital. They called them abandoned babies. The mothers did not abandon these babies. Many of the mothers were frightened to death of what would happen to them, and they would flee the hospital. But I would see them coming back and peeking through the nursery windows. But I still had this jaundice, how could and I watched the babies, the suffering that they went through that withdrawal period. And I thought, how can a mother do this? So I went, I'm very sorry to admit, to the program thinking, well, I'll be there to help the babies. Almost immediately, it is exactly what you said, Anna Marie. I came to understand, almost within the first days, these are women who are desperate to be good mothers, desperate to be. And if I had their histories, far be it from me, I'd be in the same shoes, that they are even there and in that position. The stories were unbelievable. But I had that question, how do you teach a mother to touch in a healthy and a loving and a nurturing way who may never have had that experience? Not only had that experience, their experiences of touch have been not positive experiences, and sometimes quite traumatic and abusive. So they come with hands off. And there's also that regulatory piece where they're
Right.
desperate to make contact with the baby, a baby who is so dysregulated. The most intensive thing we can do to our nervous systems is make eye contact. So the mothers, my experience is they're desperate to make eye contact with the babies, but the babies can't stand it. So the first thing the baby does is turn away and move away. And mothers interpret that as rejection. And it starts this cycle of a relationship that infant massage is so powerful to change in that moment, because that mother comes fully equipped with a cascade of neurohormones that are helping her drives to be a good mother. But she doesn't have the tools. So my wish and my prayer is that we find a civil society that understands that. I cringe at the thought that the undermining we're doing of those early parent supports right now. It is lifelong changes for both the parent and the mother that happens in that moment. So I'm going to backtrack and come back to your question. How do you do? So how do you, and I just held that question. How do I, because there were mothers that came in and would put their babies on the ground and say, he hates touch. I'm not touching my baby. And I would say, that's fine. I know you have rules, have very strict rules in the drug rehab. I said, the minute you come into this room and we close the door, the only rule is that you find the way to make the connection with your baby that feels best for you. And you know what's best for your baby. That's if you need to just sit on the sofa and hold your baby and take a little nap because they were exhausted from withdrawal.
Yep.
You have my permission. And every one of them, step by step, would ultimately be back on the ground and wanting to learn and wanting to find the way. And touch was just the tool to build that, to help the mother read the cues. That's the cue. That gives that embodied sense of feeling felt with, feeling seen. And a parent's touch has that ability. It's one synapse away from the nerves in the skin to the regulating portions of the brain at the brainstem. It's instantaneous to the brainstem to turn off those hyper aroused nervous systems in both the mother and the child. And that is the basis where all social connection begins. It's that quiet, calm, where the parasympathetic nervous system triggers that cascade of neurohormones, oxytocin, endogenous opioids, the dopamine. All of those that we are hardwired for that connection when we come in. And the beauty of how that can happen, it doesn't happen immediately. But I also realized mothers didn't understand that. What does that feel like? You have to have a sense of it, a feeling of it. I was watching Jack Liskin's, I think that was who said, or was it? It was one of the recent podcasts you did. And it was at the end of Milton's life. And he said he was physically depleted, but he just came up and put his hands on him. And that was all that happened. There's so much that happens in that moment. So I started giving just simple hand and arm massages to the mothers. So each class began with giving them a hand and arm massage, just so they could feel and have the experience of what it feels like to have a relaxation response from that touch. And that's what I hope to do. But it was really it was transformative for me. I saw that it was transformative for the mothers. But it's a step-by-step process. It's really, I don't know, are you familiar with Bruce Perry and his work with the neurosequential model of brain development?
Not so much. I don't know. Richard, are you familiar?
I'm not familiar. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I
Right.
think most people know him now because he wrote the book with Oprah about trauma.
Ah,
And so they're more familiar, but all of his work before that was this neurosequential development, our model of brain development, and essentially child development. And he talks about the power of repetition, of repeating patterns that go down to those foundational levels in our brain stem where all of that regulatory capacity happens, and that we have the capacity through the repetition of those rhythmic activities to help rewire and change the brain. And there's now lots of neuroscience that's, backing that up. But I believe down on the mats with the mothers and babies, I had a real experience of watching that happen. But it's repetition. And the work I do with children with autism, which we'll talk about later, but it's the exact same principle of using the parent-child relationship with the attuned touch skills to start to repair first the relationship, and through the conveyance of parent touch to help to start to do the repair of the sensory regulatory, essentially an immature sensory nervous system, and helping that to grow and develop, which becomes the basis for all higher order organizations, relationship possibilities, and cognitive possibilities. That was a bit of a trip, but
no, thank you. That's beautiful.
but touch really starts at the basis to provide all of that.
Yep. Its skin is where it's at. All the energy that's coming through. And the other aspect of it is through the somatics, is really the balancing of this. Our medical model does not even acknowledge that. And it is such a basic fundamental piece to self-care and regulations. And I'd like to hear more about that in our next episode from you. But for now, I'm just going to ask if you'd be so kind to share with us, our audience, how people can get in touch with you. What would be the best way to get in touch with you, Linda?
I don't know if you post it with the videos, but through my email, which is linda@garofallou.com.
Wonderful. And yes, we will post that. And I'm going to invite our listeners to join us again for more of this wonderful exchange we're having with Linda. For now, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Be well.